All for One's Guide to a Peaceful Retirement. Written by ScottishSunshine and read for you by Eleanor Elizabeth. Chapter 33. Parenting is never easy. Summary. Hitoshi has his first real argument with his new father, Izuku aged 8. I want Izuku to come. Eraserhead sighs and rubs at his forehead. He's still in his costume since he only just got in from patrol about half an hour ago, and is probably tired. But Hitoshi doesn't care. He's made up his mind, and hero or not, this is one fight Eraser is not going to win. Don't you have any other friends? I guess. Hitoshi frowns as he thinks a bit. Technically, he does, although... Great. Eraserhead manages a rather unconvincing smile. How about we invite them instead? But Izuku will be hurt if I only invite Shota and Tenya, Hitoshi points out. And although he feels guilty even thinking it, Izuku is way better than Shota and Tenya. Izuku is, and always will be, the best. Eraserhead groans, then he scowls and looks over at Present Mike, who is watching them with a large grin, a mug of tea at his elbow, munching on Pocky. Do you think you could help me here? Oh no, Mike responds cheerfully, despite having literally rolled out of bed only 10 minutes earlier. I've been dealing with you for 7 years, now it's your turn. What's that supposed to mean? He's like your tiny clone. Mike laughs, delighted, as he gestures with his Pocky. He even has your scowl. Remind me again, why do I put up with you? I'm free childcare. If you need someone to watch me, Izuku's dad could do it. Hitoshi sees an opportunity. Or Kurogiri, or the Idas, or even Mrs. Yukiyama. They're way more responsible than Mike. Hey! You have to admit he's got a point, Eraserhead points out with the faintest smile, and Hitoshi perks up slightly. I don't want to hear that from you, mister. I'll just eat jelly packs, Mike huffs. But then he turns his attention to Hitoshi. But, Hitoshi, isn't there anyone from your school you want to invite? No? Hitoshi pulls a face as he thinks about the idiots in his class. They're dumb. They either think I'm scary or want me to use my quirk to do naughty things. Shota? We're not transferring him in the middle of the school year, Eraserhead sighs. Look, Hitoshi, I know you like Izuku, but he has an unfortunate habit of attracting situations. Exactly, Hitoshi nods. He needs me to protect him. Oh dear God. Eraser hides his face in his hands. Besides, I was one of his situations. If not for Izuku, I'd still be in foster care. He has a point. No. Eraser shakes his head firmly. Izuku is not coming, and that is final. But he saved me, Hitoshi protests. He wipes at his eyes angrily. He has to come. No. It's not fair. He can't help that he wants to help people. Hitoshi. He saved me and you didn't. Hitoshi! Eraserhead slams his hands on the table. That's enough. Hitoshi doesn't listen. He lets out an angry scream and bolts out of the kitchen. He runs to his room and slams the door behind himself. Then he opens it again and screams in the direction he came. I hate you! Then he slams the door again and throws himself onto his bed. He almost curls up with Minizawa, and then he remembers that he hates Eraserhead and throws it at the door with an angry yell. Then he feels guilty and fetches it, because it isn't Minizawa's fault that Eraserhead is such a jerk. He curls back up on his bed and listens as his adopted father shuffles out of the kitchen. The man pauses outside Hitoshi's bedroom for a few seconds. Then he shuffles on. Hitoshi can just make out the sound of the master bedroom door closing. He sniffs and rolls over to grab his scrapbook from under the bed. Present Mike had given it to him to celebrate his adoption, and now Hitoshi flips through it. He ignores the photos from his first Christmas, of him posing in his Halloween costume next to Eraserhead. The man won't admit it, but Hitoshi knows he keeps a copy of that photo in his wallet, and when he finally settles on the page, he sniffs and wipes at his eyes. Hey, little listener. Present Mike knocks and lets himself in. He sighs when he sees Hitoshi and joins him on the bed. Hitoshi, I want Izuku to come. Hitoshi repeats and stares down at the page. Izuku's beaming face smiles back at him. He wipes at his eyes angrily. It's not his fault he gets into situations. I know, Hitoshi. The voice hero sighs and puts an arm around him. Izuku is a lovely boy, and if it weren't for him, you'd have never become part of our family. It's just... I think Shota worries. But why? Hitoshi asks. Because he's your dad? Mike chuckles. It's in the job description. I think he likes Izuku. He's just scared you'll get into trouble and he won't be able to help. But there are other people that could help, Hitoshi points out. Kurogiri, or Mr. Midoriya, or Machia. Yes, but Mike hesitates and then sighs. Hitoshi, if something happened to Izuku and he was in the hospital, would you want to visit him? Yes. But he'd have his dad there, and Kurogiri, and Machia, and probably Shoto and Tenya, and they'd be able to comfort him. Yes, but... Hitoshi frowns as he puzzles it out. Then he sighs and pulls Minizawa close. This is a dad thing, isn't it? Absolutely. You know, you're pretty smart. Yeah, I do. Hitoshi does his best to be excited about his birthday. Even if his friends aren't there, it's still better than all of his previous birthdays put together. Eraserhead took the whole day off after all, and Hitoshi put on his eraser costume and they went to the cinema. And then they went to a cat cafe, and Hitoshi ordered chocolate cake and took at least a dozen photos of Eraserhead fast asleep, several cats curled all around him. Present Mike will probably love them, and Hitoshi figures it can't hurt to be owed a favour. But by the time they head home, Hitoshi is feeling rather tired, and perhaps just a teeny tiny bit lonely. He tries to remind himself that Present Mike should be home already, and there'll be presents, because even if Eraser said not to, Present Mike almost certainly went on a shopping spree. There'll probably be more cake too, with candles, and just for a second, Hitoshi's spirits lift, because he's never blown out candles before. Then he remembers that there won't be anyone his own age to cheer when they go out, and his shoulders slump. Eraserhead glances back at him as he unlocks the apartment door, and Hitoshi tries to smile. There's something weird about his adoptive father as he stands there, but Hitoshi can't figure out what, and then the man opens the door and gestures for Hitoshi to go in first. Hitoshi frowns but does so and almost bumps into the coat rack because for some reason all the lights are off. He frowns and starts looking for a light and surprise! Hitoshi almost screams when the lights go back on. He spins around and stares at Izuku, Tenya and Shoto, all grinning at him, wearing party hats. Behind them, Mike is beaming, camera in hand. Happy birthday, Hitoshi! Izuku cheers. Best wishes! Felicitations! What does that mean? Shoto asks as the two boys turn to stare at Tenya. Hitoshi doesn't care what the word means. He can't seem to tear his eyes away from the three boys until Eraserhead gently nudges him forward. I thought Izuku couldn't come. Everyone freezes. Hitoshi turns to stare at Eraserhead because he doesn't understand. I changed my mind. Eraser sighs and wipes a hand across his face. Look, everyone here can agree that Izuku seems to attract situations, right? Everyone nods, even a rather flustered Izuku. And I don't want you to get hurt, Hitoshi. Not if I can help it. Eraserhead sighs again. Something warm settles in Hitoshi's stomach because the reality that he has adults that worry about him, is still a wonderful novelty. But, well, if it means so much to you, you boys can still see each other. But there are conditions. When you boys meet, I need to know beforehand what you'll be doing and where, and there has to be an adult present. And if, God forbid, there are any situations, and there isn't an adult there, or said adult is unconscious, Izuku is to summon someone immediately, preferably me. Is that clear? Yes, Mr. Eraserhead, sir, Izuku agrees. Hitoshi can't help but laugh as he nods. Now, come on. Eraserhead manages a small smile. Kurogiri made you a cake. And then Hitoshi surprises both himself and the man by throwing his arms around him and saying, Thanks, Dad. Chapter 34. Gigantomachia never counts as adult supervision. Summary. Izuku has heard about some weird events in Naruhata and wants to check it out. Izuku, age 10. I think we should go to Naruhata. Shoto isn't entirely sure why he feels a shiver of dread at such a simple suggestion. Then again, this is Izuku. However much Shoto loves his best friend, he does have an unfortunate habit of attracting situations. Why would we want to go to Naruhata? Tenya asks with a frown, voicing Shoto's own uncertainty. Research! Izuku exclaims, bright-eyed. Oh dear God, Shoto pales. He might not know the specifics, but when he glances over at Tenya, it's obvious the bespectacled boy agrees completely. Hitoshi's shoulders are shaking in silent laughter, but he doesn't count. He's been exposed to Present Mike for far too long to be sensible. It has been well established by now that research and Izuku should never feature in the same sentence. Heck, they probably shouldn't even be on the same page. Izuku is a wonderful friend and highly intelligent, but his fascination with quirks, well, it does have an unfortunate habit of getting them into situations. You don't even know what I mean, Izuku frowns, offended. All right, Tenya, ever the voice of reason, takes a deep breath. What do you want to research in Naruhata? Well, there have been a few incidents. Izuku shrugs. You know, those weird villains and heroes and vigilantes. Absolutely not. Tenya immediately barks, his arms beginning their familiar chopping motions. We are not going to Naruhata. But we won't do anything dangerous, Izuku protests. We'll just walk around for a bit. Yes, but it's not that dangerous, Hitoshi interrupts. He helps himself to another cookie and shrugs. Dad patrols it, and he lets me go out on my own during the day. Not far, but well, you know how paranoid he is. Shota and Tenya exchange looks. Aizawa is almost as protective as Uncle Hizashi, and, as a hero, probably knows how dangerous Naruhata truly is. But Hitoshi can always be relied upon to take Izuku's side, and he is rather fond of situations. I just don't know, Tenya sighs. I don't think Uncle Hizashi would approve of us wandering around an area full of weird villain attacks unsupervised. What if we had an adult with us? Izuku perks up. Well, then, I suppose. Absolutely not. Why not? Izuku frowns. He's an adult. Shoto suspects Izuku knows perfectly well what the issue is, since he's not completely stupid. But since Tenya looks like he's 3 seconds away from imploding, and Hitoshi is busy laughing his head off, he decides it's his responsibility to point out the blatantly obvious. Izuku, Machia doesn't count. But why? Izuku crosses his arms. He's over 18, he's human, therefore he's an adult. Shoto slowly looks over at the giant, who is watching them all with an indulgent smile. It's not that he doesn't love Machia. They all do, really, and Shoto is well aware the man would protect them with his life. But, well, there is no universe in which Machia could be classified as a responsible adult. But since the longer they spend out in Naruhata, the longer they'll be grounded for, Shoto decides to get straight to the point. Izuku, what do you think Uncle Hizashi would say? We're not doing anything wrong, Izuku sniffs. Just walking around. In an area that has a higher than usual number of villain attacks, Tenya points out. Okay, yes. And I'm guessing you didn't tell Uncle Hizashi where you'd be. I said we'd be looking round some shops with Hitoshi, Izuku admits quietly. Shoto absently waves off a bee that appears out of nowhere, focused on the conversation. But it doesn't seem keen to leave him alone, and he winces as he feels another sting on the back of his neck. And then he cries out in horror as he feels warmth spreading across his left side, and cold, such cold all along his right. He stares down at his hands because he can already see the air over his left shimmering with the heat. And then it stops, and he stares dumbfounded down at his hands as the street around him erupts into complete chaos. Fortunately, he's not alone. One of his friends grabs him by the wrist and pulls him along so they dash across the street, away from the pandemonium. Tenya is going so fast, probably only seconds away from activating engine, and Shoto almost trips over more than once. Finally, they reach the relative safety of a small alley, and the 4 boys collapse behind a dumpster. Holy shit, Hitoshi pants. What the fuck was that? There was a bee, Shoto states, still in shock. He looks back down at his hands, almost expecting to see fire and ice, but they're still normal. There was a bee, and heat, and then he finally understands what happened, and his head snaps up. Sorry, Izuku flushes. I kind of panicked. Shoto opens his mouth and then closes it. Then he opens it again, realizes he doesn't quite know what to say, and steps forward and throws his arms around his best friend. Thank you, he chokes out. Because if he lost control of half heart, half cold, if he hurt someone, if Endeavour saw him. I do not think we can leave yet, Tenya informs them as he moves to the entrance of the alley and peers out from behind a trash can. There's a lot of fighting and, oh look, it's Tensei! Where? Izuku gasps, suitably distracted. He frees himself from Shoto's embrace and runs over to join Tenya, and Shoto and Hitoshi share knowing looks before joining their friends. It's rather fun watching the heroes, even if they'll probably get in trouble later. Izuku cheers when Midnight takes down a villain, Hitoshi laughs when he spots Present Mike in action. Tenya is beaming with pride watching his brother at work, and although Shoto flinches when he spots Endeavour, the man is busy, and the presence of his friends helps ease his fears, especially when they all move just a little closer to him. Shoto is basking in the warmth that comes from being surrounded by people that love him when he realizes someone is missing. Where's Machia? Oh, he's... Izuku twists round to look behind him and freezes. Where's he gone? I know where he is, Tenya informs them in a faint voice. What? Where? Oh, fuck, Hitoshi breathes as Tenya wordlessly points. You made little Lord cry! A 20-foot giant roars as he charges the present Mike, who takes one look at him, screams, and bolts. Run? Shoto suggests as they watch Machia send Endeavour flying into a nearby building with little more than a passing blow. Run, Hitoshi nods. Shouldn't we? Izuku starts, and then Machia grabs a nearby car and throws it after the fleeing voice hero. Okay, never mind. On 3, Tenya takes charge. 1, 2, 3, run! Hello? Hey, Uncle Hisashi, it's Tensei? Tensei? Hisashi frowns as he puts down his tablet. There's a strange echoing coming from the other end, almost like, are you still at work? Yeah, Tensei chuckles awkwardly. Is Izuku home? I think the boys decided to go shopping. Hisashi smiles. Then he gets a rather bad feeling. Why do you ask? Well, Tensei hesitates. It's just that I just watched Best Jeanist arrest Machia. Thank you for calling me. Hisashi nods and takes down the details of the police station in Naruhata. Then he hangs up and... Izuku! Chapter 35. Doing the right thing is a pain in the arse. Summary. It's time to say goodbye to Captain Celebrity, although Hisashi has a bad feeling. Izuku aged 10. I'm not really sure about this, Hisashi sighs. Come on, Uncle Hisashi, Tensei rolls his eyes. It'll be fine. I told you. I'm not your uncle! That's not funny. Hisashi levels the 3 boys with an unimpressed look. Yes, it is, Izuku disagrees. I can still change my mind about this stupid party, Hisashi points out. You're all technically still grounded. Come on, Uncle Hisashi, Tensei rolls his eyes. It's perfectly safe. There'll be like a dozen heroes there. You do know you just jinxed us. With all due respect, Mr. Midoriya, Ingenium has a point. Tsukashi smiles as he pockets his phone. I doubt any villains will be foolish enough to attack the party. Except for every villain that has something to prove. Hisashi can't help but massage his forehead in a vain attempt to stave off the inevitable headache. Seriously, what do they teach you at UA? Interview techniques? I'm calling Nezu first thing in the morning. I'm afraid I have to go. Tsukashi grins at the boys. You boys have fun, though. If we're attacked, I will use my quirk, Hisashi calls after him. And that's not all kinds of terrifying, Tensei mutters. What was that? Absolutely nothing! Tensei treats them all to one last grin before slipping on his helmet. Then he strikes a pose that would probably look more impressive if he weren't standing in a sitting room. Kurogiri, to the sky egg! I'm not your personal taxi, Kurogiri informs him, and as if to prove a point, sits down on the sofa. But, please, Kurogiri? Izuku speaks up, eyes wide and pleading. Shoto's eyes look distinctly shinier, and even Tenya seems to be on the pleading, although he looks more constipated rather than anything else. That's how it's done. Kurogiri smiles at Tensei. They have an unfair advantage, the hero mutters as the warp gate opens. The area they emerge in is a nice, mostly empty corridor where the performers are getting ready. Almost as soon as the gate is closed, a familiar figure launches himself at Izuku. Izuku! Hitoshi cheers as he hugs the other boy. Hitoshi! Izuku grins. I didn't know you were coming. Dad had to work, the boy shrugs. And Mike's my designated babysitter, so... Oh dear God, Hisashi mutters. Hey, it's my favourite little listeners! Papa, can we go see the heroes? Izuku asks, turning to his father. Hisashi is tempted to refuse. Izuku might attract trouble, but Izuku and Hitoshi almost guarantee something will go wrong before the night's out. It's not even like they go looking for trouble, but unfortunately, trouble seems to always know when they are together. Hisashi rather suspects he and Aizawa share the unusual amount of appreciation for dear, sensible Tenya, and, however good his intentions, present Mike has a rather unfortunate history. But then, sweet, blessed Kurogiri clears his throat. Sir, I'd like to go greet Shino. All right, fine, Hisashi sighs and nods. Whatever Kurogiri says goes. Am I understood? Yes, Papa, Izuku grins. Tenya nods enthusiastically, Shota salutes, and Hitoshi can barely seem to stand still. I'll be in the VIP section, Hisashi informs them and watches as the four boys turn and bolt in the direction of the performers area, present Mike close on their heels. Kurogiri nods to him one last time and follows at a more sedate pace, warping a red rose from somewhere. And then, just as Hisashi wonders whether he should treat himself to a drink, he hears the voice. Madara? Oh, dear God, Hisashi knows that voice. It's you, isn't it? From the graveyard? He's getting closer. Why is he coming over? Madara? Yagi, Hisashi greets All Might as he summons his most polite, convincing smile and turns to the man. He ignores Tensei snickering. I thought it was you, the blonde grins, and then he seems to notice the shaking ingenium. Is he all right? Oh, he's always like that, Hisashi shrugs. I suspect brain damage. Hey! I wasn't aware you knew any heroes. It's not by my choice, I assure you, Hisashi sighs. But his brother is my son's best friend. The incredible, amazing one? That would be him. Aw, thanks, Uncle Hit. Unfortunately, it skipped his brother. Hey! Don't you have a show to prepare for? Hisashi asked the clearly sulking hero. Yes, you're right, Madara, Tensei sighs. Hey, do you think there's a quirk out there like Susanoo? Tensei. Fine. The hero nods and turns to leave, but not before the parting cry of Rasengan! Hisashi almost runs after the annoying brat, but checks his bloodlust and treats Yagi to a tight-lipped smile. I was just on my way to the VIP section. Oh, me too, Yagi exclaimed with a grin. I'm looking forward to this. Normally, well, I don't usually get to be in the audience. It's official. The universe hates Hisashi. And how's your son? He asks in attempt at polite conversation. Oh, he's doing great. The blonde laughs as he leads them to the VIP seating area. In fact, Tenko, come say hi. Tenko is a sullen teenager dressed in a black hoodie, completely engrossed in playing a battered black PSP. He tilts his head and lets out a vague grunt of acknowledgement, and Hisashi mentally congratulates himself because he clearly got the superior son. He also prays Izuku skips the antisocial teenager phase. How is your son doing? Yagi asks, apparently unbothered by his own offspring's behaviour. Oh, he's fine, Hisashi smiles. He's currently terrorising a few heroes with his friends. The way Yagi flinches and looks around, almost as if he's expecting Izuku to appear out of thin air and demand an autograph, improves Hisashi's mood immensely. He chuckles and settles to wait for Izuku to resurface. It's a good 10 minutes later, when the lights are being turned down, that the door to the VIP area opens again, and 4 excited boys rush in. Papa, guess what? Hisashi can identify the exact moment Izuku recognizes the other adult present. His son freezes. He gasps, and Hisashi just manages to slap a hand over Izuku's mouth before he exclaims, Oh my God, it's All Might! I think All Might's here undercover, Hisashi informs his son, and I think he'd probably prefer nobody finds out, alright? Yes, Uncle Hisashi, Tenya agrees. Izuku nods his head enthusiastically, green eyes sparkling. Hitoshi salutes with a cheeky grin, and Shoto staring at the blonde hero wide-eyed, like he can't believe he's real. How did you? All Might asks. Seriously? Tenko finally looks up from his console. You don't exactly blend in, Dad. Really? The expressions of everyone gathered in the VIP area speak volumes. Well, I am here undercover. All Might nods and smiles down at the 4 friends. So perhaps you'll be willing to keep my secret, maybe in exchange for an autograph? How about a photo? Hisashi suggests. Because there is no way in hell that Rei is going to miss the expression on Shoto's face. And, sure enough, the lad finally drags his gaze away from the hero and stares up at Hisashi with such absolute wonder on his face. Hisashi might not like All Might, but damn it, the man has his uses. They end up missing the first few minutes of the show because Hisashi can't quite bring himself to end their little photo shoot. It's hard, because Izuku is grinning like a maniac, yes, but Shoto can't seem to bring himself to look at the camera, almost like he's afraid All Might will vanish the minute he looks away. Finally, they all take their seats, and if Hisashi wipes his eyes, well, no one else notices, and no one needs to know if he happens to make a few copies for himself when he has them printed for Rei. And damn it, the event doesn't get any easier when Captain Celebrity, the big idiot, decides to show everyone a photo of his newborn and wife. The man is almost certainly in big trouble, Hazashi is sure. There are few women who look stunning after however many hours in labour, and fewer still that would agree to photos taken at that time being widely shared. But for the first time in a long time, Hazashi feels connected to a hero, because he remembers the absurd joy and pride that come with being a new father, and how all the emotions just cannot seem to be contained. Hazashi glances over at his Izuku and wipes at his eyes, and then laughs as poor Captain Celebrity promptly calls his wife and gets yelled at. The hero hurries off stage and the show continues. It's not terribly interesting, Hazashi, just a number of heroes showing off, and he slips off to use the toilet. He's just washing his hands when suddenly the building shakes. Then, just as he hurries out into the corridor, it shakes again. And then, all the lights go out. Hazashi swears and rushes in the direction of the VIP area, grateful for the emergency lighting, when he collides with a dark figure that seems to blend in with the shadows. Sir! Kurogiri grabs him by the arms firmly. I already sent the boys home. If it would be all right, I would like to offer my assistance to Shino. Yes, Hazashi nods, numb with relief. Then he processes fully what the man said, and thinks about it for a few seconds, then nods again. Yes, go ahead, I'll just... Uncle Hazashi! Tensei rushes up to them. Uncle Hazashi, where's Tenya? I sent the boys home, Kurogiri informs him, and glances at Hazashi one last time. I'll just... Yes, fine. Hazashi nods and steps back, allowing the young man to hurry off in the direction of the performers area. We can't get in contact with anyone outside, Tensei informs him, and I thought about what you said and what's happening. He's not asking in the general sense, Hazashi realizes. This is not a question from a scared teenager. This is a professional hero asking for his opinion. And, although he might not know it, there is probably no one better suited to dealing with this situation. No contact. They probably cut off the electronic signals. Hazashi frowns and then nods. Yes, a strong pulse would knock that and the lights out, doubly effective. People are most likely to panic in the dark. Lifts are down, so they'll make sure the stairs are inaccessible. We're trapped. In a hangar above the ground. Hostages? They could be planning to break in and attack. No, ineffective. Too many heroes, too messy, too difficult. Statement. Maximum capacity, 50,000, plus staff, 50,000 hostages, 50,000 lives, 50,000 victims. What? Tensei asks, and the emergency lighting gives his already pale face a nightmarish look. You mean... Bring down the sky egg, and at least half of those present will likely die. Hazashi nods, grim. And most of the survivors will be seriously injured. Even if only 10,000 die, they're dying in the center of Tokyo, at an event put on and attended by heroes. That right there, that's a statement, a declaration. Someone put in a lot of effort. Who? Who could be responsible? Hazashi mentally starts flipping through his villain's Rolodex, because this cannot be tolerated. If some fool has decided to declare war on heroes, fine. Hazashi can understand and even respect that, even if this is the sort of act that will have every hero in Japan breathing down their neck. But this is unacceptable. Izuku could have been hurt. I'll go warn the others, Tensei groans. We can't find Captain Celebrity. Could you look for him? I'm not getting involved, Hazashi snorts. This is not my problem. I'm going home and make sure the boys don't burn the house down. But Tensei starts to protest. Then he lets out a frustrated groan. Fine, you know what? Fine. You want to step aside and not do anything? Fine. He takes off, almost colliding with another member of staff, and Hazashi sighs and nods to himself. This is the best course of action. He's not a hero. He's not going to get involved. He'll go home and help the boys set up for a sleepover and... God damn it, Captain Celebrity has a boy of his own. Hazashi curses. Do you think they'll be all right? Izuku looks over at Hitoshi, who looks ready to throw up, and, well, when he looks over his shoulder, Tenya seems to only be barely holding back tears, and even Izuku's kind of scared, because Kurogiri and Papa are still at the Tokyo Sky Egg, and if they die, Izuku doubts Machia will be a very good parent. They'll be fine, Shoto announces confidently. When his friends all look at him, he smiles and shrugs. Well, All Might's there, and so is Uncle Hazashi, and he's almost as strong as All Might, so everyone will be fine. The other heroes won't even have anything to do. It's somewhat comforting when Izuku thinks about it, because All Might should be able to protect Papa and make sure he doesn't get hurt and... Little Lord! Where is Lord and Miss Man? The four boys freeze, and then, slowly, they turn and face a very confused Machia. He's... Izuku begins, desperately trying to come up with an answer that will not have the giant racing out the front door. There were some bad people, Tenya begins, and his friends all look at him in horror because that's a terrible thing to say. So Uncle Hazashi sent us home. Yes! Izuku catches on to what Tenya's going for. Because I'm scared and Shoto's scared. Hitoshi kicks Shoto. So, we need you to protect us? Just for added effect, he sniffles, and then he thinks about his mum and, "Please don't leave," he wails. "Uncle Hisashi said you were the only one he could trust," Tenya adds. "Not even Kurogiri's as strong as you." "Yes," Machia puffs off his chest and beams down at the four boys. "I will protect you." Kurogiri hesitates at the entrance to the backstage area. There are members of staff gathered, yes, but there are at least a dozen highly regarded heroes present too, discussing the best way to deal with the present crisis, and for a second he feels that perhaps he should simply turn around and stay out of their way. But then he spots Shino and the other pussycats, and he can't help but smile. This is her area of expertise, and whenever he sees her on TV, he wonders if she's truly as confident and reassuring as she seems to be. And now, finally, he can see that she is that and more. And somehow, he is the lucky man who gets to support her. "Shino!" He calls over to her and feels a warmth settle in his chest as she looks over. Despite the serious situation, her face lights up. "Kurogiri!" She pushes her way over to him. "What are you—" "I sent Izuku home," he explains and glances around. A few of the people closest to them are watching them, but most are still focused on Captain Celebrity's assistant. "And, well, I thought if you needed help with evacuation." Shino stares at him for a second, then she laughs and kisses him. "Hey!" She calls out and turns away from him as she tries to remember what is going on. "Kurogiri's got a teleportation quirk, if we want to get people out." "Oh, good," the assistant grins. "We have to keep people calm and figure out how to prioritize. Kurogiri, how many people can you teleport?" "I'm not sure." Kurogiri hesitates, suddenly self-conscious. He's not a hero after all. It's not really specific to people. I can open something like a door to a nearby area. Last I checked, I can keep it open for about an hour, and then I need to rest." There's excited murmuring all around him, and with a wide grin, the woman clasps her hands. "Great! We'll set you up somewhere backstage. Manuel, you go through first and raise the alarm. Then, let's prioritize those with serious health conditions, disabilities, and really young children. Then we'll see how many we have left. Everyone else, try and keep them calm." "See, this is why I love you," Shino whispers as the gathered heroes start dispersing. "Kurogiri, right?" "Back off, best genist," Tiger shouts. "We got him first." With every attack from the flying villain, it gets harder to stay conscious, but Captain Celebrity grits his teeth and grins. After all, he's all that's preventing the Tokyo Sky Egg from falling to the ground. He is all that is preventing 50,000 people from dying. It's exhausting, he won't lie, and, in truth, he isn't sure how he'll get out of this situation. And waiting for the next blow, the next attack Kochi can't stave off, is difficult, because he has too much time to think. To imagine the moment they tell his wife he died in the line of duty. To picture his son growing up with little more than photographs of his dumb father who went and got himself killed. Oh, Christ, he knows he'd be a terrible father. The kid would probably hate him anyway. But still, all those little moments when perhaps they might connect. All those science projects he'll mess up, and those school performances he'll be late for, those sports events he'll embarrass his son at, they'll never happen. And even the knowledge that he's doing his duty as a hero doesn't dull that ache, doesn't chase away the tears he's blinking back. The flying villain, should he even call it a villain? It's more like a monster. Draws back for another blow, and Chris curses because the thing seems unstoppable. And then he watches in confusion as the thing promptly drops out of the sky. For a few seconds, Captain Celebrity stares down at the crater the thing created. Then he looks back up to where it was just before, almost expecting it to be there, ready to attack. Could he be hallucinating? Did he get a concussion? Why did it look like the thing's wings vanished for a second? And then a figure appears in front of him. He blinks and shakes his head, because now he's certainly hallucinating, and his head is swimming, and his vision is going dark around the edges. And just before everything goes black, he hears a voice exclaim, "No! Don't faint now, damn it!" Your stay in Japan certainly had a dramatic ending, Captain Celebrity. Tell me though, was there ever a moment you were afraid? What was your lowest moment? Captain Celebrity hesitates and glances away from me, and I straighten. His smile falters for just a moment, and when he looks back at me, he's no longer the cheerful, confident hero we all know. "I suppose," he starts, and then takes a deep breath. "It was the Tokyo Sky Egg incident, not knowing if I would live or die. It wasn't because I was scared of dying, but I kept thinking how I would never once hear my son say the word Dad. That was my lowest moment. Well, Hisashi smiles as he sets down the magazine. Maybe there's hope for you. Chapter 37. Parent is a job. Dad is an honor. Summary. Mother's Day is coming up. Izuku aged 11. Izuku? Hisashi frowns as he steps into the living room. Is everything alright? Izuku startles so badly that he almost falls off the sofa. He slams the album he was looking at closed and jumps, cheeks beet red. Yes, fine, everything's fine, absolutely fine. I just go. Yes, I have to go. He almost smacks himself in the face as he waves his arms, then bolts from the room, almost running into a wall. Hisashi stares after him in confusion and winces when he hears a suspicious thump on the stairs. Hoping for some explanation, he approaches the sofa and picks up the photo album Izuku had been looking at. But that just deepens his confusion. Why would Izuku act guilty over looking at his parents' wedding photos? Izuku glances over at his rucksack. Then he looks up at his mother's photo and flushes as he looks away. He wishes he'd never gone into that store. But it seemed so natural, such an obvious gesture. But now he just can't get over the guilt. He wishes he could talk about it with an adult, but he just can't face Papa. He can't admit what he's done to his father, and Kurogiri is nice and kind, but he'd probably not understand either. And who else is there? He can't go to Auntie Ray, and Auntie Katsume is all the way down in Okinawa. Perhaps Aizawa? No, not Aizawa. The man is absolutely terrible at anything even remotely related to feelings. Present Mike might be a possibility, though. Izuku listens to his radio show, and the advice he gives, it actually makes sense. And they aren't too close, so it shouldn't be too awkward. Izuku? His father knocks on the door. I just wanted to let you know that I'm going to be working late, so you'll be alone with Kurogiri. Is everything alright? Izuku can't help but stare at his father, because even though he's almost a teenager now, he's so confused and scared, and he just wants his papa to comfort him, and to tell him it's alright, and that he still loves him, and his mum still loves him, and he doesn't want to cry, but suddenly he just can't seem to stop. Come here, Izuku. Papa sits down on his bed and opens his arm, and despite everything, Izuku goes. Because even if things won't be alright, at least this is a way to pretend, just for a moment, that he didn't do something absolutely dreadful. Not on your sleeve, Papa groans half-heartedly as Izuku wipes his nose. And despite everything, Izuku snickers. And then he freezes, because Papa reaches down into his rucksack for tissues, and he seems to notice how all the blood drains from Izuku's face. And then, slowly, he pulls out the card. It's nothing special, really. It's small, smaller than a sheet of A5, with a simple picture of some flowers on it, and the caption, "You're like a mother to me." It had seemed so natural at the time to pick it up, when Izuku was buying his usual Mother's Day card, that he hadn't even thought about scrawling a few lines in it at the food court. But then he had returned home, and the first thing he saw was a smiling photograph of his beautiful, caring mother, and he had felt so guilty, like he was trying to replace her, and he wasn't he? Izuku. I'm sorry, Izuku sobs. He looks away, because he can't stand to face his father when he did something so awful. His father loves his mother so much, after all. I don't know what I was thinking. I swear, I love Mom. I'm sorry. Izuku, it's all right, his father says, even though it's not. Look at me. Who were you going to give this card to? Izuku glances over at his mother's smiling face and flinches. Auntie Ray? She doesn't know. It just felt right. Izuku nods, ashamed. Izuku. His papa starts and then pauses to take a deep breath. Izuku, you were young when Inko died, and I know you don't really remember her and only know her through my stories, but she's still Mum. Exactly, Papa nods. He takes a deep breath and closes his eyes. And she loved you very much, and I want you to listen very carefully to me now. I think the loving, devoted mother I knew would be so relieved to know there is someone else in your life who you love and feel you can rely on. And I think she would thank Ray for being there when she couldn't. Nothing can replace Inko. But if you want to give this to Ray, I think you should. And I think Inko would give you her blessing. For just a second, Izuku stares at his father, and then he bursts into, relieved, tears as all the tension of the past 3 days escapes. Mother's Day starts much the same as every previous Mother's Day in the Midoriya household. Izuku tries to comb his hair and put on some of his nicer clothes and grabs the card he bought. And once he's eaten breakfast, Kurogiri drops him and a few muffins off at the entrance to the cemetery, where Papa is already waiting with a big bouquet of flowers. The man hangs back as Izuku places the offerings on the grave and launches into a long, detailed summary of everything that has happened in the past. Well, Izuku never really bothers about a specific time frame, or whether he's already told Mom about something. The wares just seem to cascade out until finally they run dry and he accepts a bottle of water from his Papa. And then his Papa steps up. He never really talks, not like Izuku, but when he watches him, Izuku feels like there's some deep, meaningful conversation happening just below the surface. And then Papa closes his eyes, bows his head, and reaches out to brush his hand against the name carved in the stone. And then they leave. But this time, they don't go straight home. They go to the Yukiyama apartment, where Natsuo opens the door and there is wrapping paper strewn across the living room floor, and Fuyumi can be heard arguing with Toya in the kitchen. Auntie Ray tears up when Izuku hands her the card and pulls him into a hug, and at some point, Izuku starts tearing up, so Papa had to go look for tissues, and then lunch is ready, so really, it only seems natural that they stay and eat. And somehow, when he's washing his hands, Izuku can't help but glance over his shoulder, because he could have sworn he felt someone's hand brush against his cheek. "Thank you for this," Hisashi whispers later, once they've cleared the table and retreated to the kitchen. He can hear the children. Are they still children? It feels so strange to realize that Izuku and Shoto will be off to high school in just a few short years. Back in the living room, and nods gratefully as Ray hands him a small cup of tea. "No, thank you," Ray laughs as she wipes her eyes. It's an honor. Honestly, if you're sure that Inko wouldn't mind." "I think she'd be happy," Hisashi admits. "She'd see that you love Izuku, and he loves you, and I said it before, I think she'd truly view you as her sister." "Thank you," Ray repeats again. For a little while, as they wash up, they listen to the children, young adults, in the living room, and Ray clears her throat. "Actually, there is something I've been meaning to ask. I promise it won't affect my relationship with Izuku. I won't think any less of you if you can't, but—" "Ray," Hisashi interrupts and smiles. "We're friends. What is it?" "Well," Ray takes a deep breath. "You know how Toya will be graduating from his training soon?" "Yes," Hisashi frowns. "Did your supervisor not give you the day off? I told her—" "It's not that," Ray assures him. She takes a deep breath and continues. "Well, you don't have to come, of course, and he won't say anything, but it would mean so much to Toya if you would come to his graduation. I understand if you can't, of course. We aren't really family after all, and—" Hisashi isn't really paying much attention. He thinks back to Toya, brave, protective Toya, who never seemed to mind sacrificing time with his peers to play with his brother, who was always ready with a smile and kind word. Strong, mature Toya, who has chosen to become a police officer because, more than anything, he wants to one day be able to look a scared child in the eyes and say, "You're safe now." "You know," Hisashi begins, and then stops to swallow a lump in his throat. "I think that sounds wonderful." Chapter 37. Acknowledge Your Mistakes. Summary. Bakugou meets Izuku again. Izuku aged 13. Katsuki huffs as he leaves the store. He knows perfectly well he should have picked up something for the hag's birthday earlier, but it completely slipped his mind, which is why, instead of working on his homework, he's desperately combing them all, trying to think of a good gift. Finally, he decides to take a break and heads over to the food court. It's a little late for lunch, but there's still plenty of people when he gets his food. He's just searching for a table when he spots a familiar face and, fed up, starts heading over. He and Yukiyama aren't friends, but there's mutual respect there. Katsuki likes to believe. They don't hang out outside of school, but they always end up paired up for PE and regularly tie for first place in their year. And if Katsuki happened to have a quiet word with a few of their new classmates when they started middle school, well, it was only because he wasn't sure how Yukiyama would explain freezing a corridor. His classmate is laughing, Katsuki notes. It's strange seeing him like this when he's normally so stoic at school, but it makes sense. Katsuki doesn't recognize the two boys he's with, but he knows Yukiyama spends most of his free time with his friends from another school. Katsuki even kind of remembers their names, Tenya and... The tray clatters against the floor, and three heads swivel to stare at him, and if there were any doubts before, they've gone now, because Katsuki knows those green eyes. He recognizes the mop of messy curls, because Katsuki remembers. He remembers his father picking him up from daycare early, a serious expression on his face, and several bags in the car. They didn't go home. In fact, they went straight to his grandparents and stayed there. Katsuki never went back to that daycare. He remembers his father sitting him down and explaining, with a serious expression and no-nonsense tone, that heroes don't make people cry. Heroes didn't hurt people on purpose. In fact, hurting people was something villains did, and whilst Katsuki was still young, he really should have known better, and both his parents were very disappointed in him. Years later, Katsuki still remembers the unfamiliar bitter weight of shame in his stomach. They went home after a week, and while Katsuki waited to start his new daycare, his mother stayed home with him. Only, she wasn't the same. She didn't laugh or joke around. In fact, she was so quiet, it felt almost like she wasn't there at times. Sometimes she even cried. Finally, Katsuki got fed up with the awkward, unfamiliar atmosphere, so after breakfast one day he asked, like he had a dozen times before, if they could go over to Auntie Inko's. He'd thought about what his father said, and decided to give Deku his All Might crayons, and then they'd be even. But his mother hadn't said she'd call Auntie Inko. She looked at him strangely. Horrified, his brain would decide on when he was older and wiser, choked back a sob, and then hurried out of the kitchen, leaving a very confused child behind. And when he got home from work, Katsuki's father sat him down and carefully explained that sometimes there's nothing doctors can do. Sometimes they can't make people better. Sometimes people die. It was a few years before Katsuki fully understood. When he did, he screamed and cried and took all of his All Might merchandise and shoved it in the furthest corner of his closet. Because Katsuki Bakugou, the future #1 hero, bullied a kid whose mother was dying. And now Izuku was staring at him in confusion, not even the faintest hint of recognition in those green eyes. And it hurts, because he looks healthy and happy without Katsuki in his life. And all Katsuki can think of is his ever-present shame. Bakugou? Yukiyama speaks up. Yukiyama, the bastard, Katsuki realizes, who was there when Katsuki wasn't, who supported Izuku, comforted him when he cried, instead of laughing and walking away. Are you alright? The name at least seems to mean something, because Katsuki watches Izuku's face scrunch up as he seems to try and remember. And then, in a soft, uncertain tone, he mumbles, Ka-chan? And then it's as if a dam inside him breaks. Every negative emotion, every unshed tear, every ounce of self-loathing is suddenly crashing over him, and Katsuki is drowning in it all. Why? He chokes out, even as he realizes there are tears rolling down his cheeks. He isn't sure if he's whispering or screaming, isn't sure if he even truly cares. Why didn't you tell me? He doesn't think he's truly asking Izuku, but it's the one question that has plagued his thoughts since he understood. The one thing he wishes he knew. Why didn't his parents tell him? Why didn't the daycare staff explain? Why didn't anyone stop him? His mouth is moving, he realizes, but he can't hear what he's saying. Because all he can seem to hear is a snot-nosed brat so convinced of his own superiority that he never once hesitated. Useless Deku, do you even have a quirk? You're such a crybaby. Just go away. His thoughts are spiraling, and just as he's convinced he's losing his mind, he feels someone wrap their arms around him and pull him into a hug, and whisper in his ear, It's alright, Ka-chan. It's alright. And Katsuki believes him. By the time the boy, Bakugou, has calmed down, he looks empty, exhausted, drained. Shoto wordlessly fetches a chair for him, and Izuku pushes his half-eaten fries over. The boy seems to appreciate the gesture, because he manages a weak smile and takes one. Tanya isn't entirely sure how he feels about the unfamiliar boy. Shoto has told them about his classmate, and whilst he didn't sound like someone Tanya would have much in common with, he also didn't sound like a bad person. But Tenya also vaguely remembers Izuku as a young child, tearful and afraid that he would be tossed aside as soon as Tenya found a better friend. And Tenya remembers asking Tensei what a Deku was, and his brother explaining to him that he should never call anyone that. And whilst Tenya knows that Izuku is almost physically incapable of holding a grudge, he isn't entirely sure that he's ready to forgive this Bakugou. "So, you two know each other?" Shoto asks hesitantly. "Yeah," Izuku nods, but he's frowning. Tenya figures he's probably trying to remember the boy. He knows he never met the blonde, and Izuku never mentioned him much, so they probably stopped seeing each other around the time Izuku switched daycares. "I bullied him," Bakugou admits and looks down, obviously ashamed. Tenya will admit he is reluctantly impressed by his honesty. Shoto frowns for a moment, glancing between the two teenagers, and then something seems to occur to him. "You're Deku." Bakugou flinches at the name. Izuku does not. Tenya feels a pit open in his stomach because Shoto never heard the name Deku, not from him, and as far as he knew, not from Izuku. "It's what I called him," the blonde admits quietly. "You were what, 3? Tenya feels the need to point out. "How do you even recognize Izuku?" Bakugou looks up at him for a moment. Tenya does not back down. He meets his gaze because Izuku is his friend, and he swore long ago that he would do his best to prove himself worthy of Izuku's trust. Finally, Bakugou huffs and pulls out his wallet. He produces a photo and pushes it forward. All 3 friends lean forward. Tenya can't help but smile. It's hard not to, because the photo is of a blonde toddler, presumably Bakugou, and a woman that looks similar enough that she's probably his mother. And next to them, little chubby Izuku and their beloved Auntie Inko. "I needed to remember," Bakugou admits quietly. Tenya reconsiders his opinion of the teenager, because it seems like, perhaps, he is willing to own up to his mistakes. "Oh," Izuku whispers, still looking at his mother. Then he shakes his head and looks up, and treats Bakugou to a beaming smile. "Well, it's alright, 'cause it wasn't fun at the time, but it all worked out. My papa transferred me to a new daycare, and I met Tenya. This is Tenya, by the way. Tenya Ida, my best friend. So..." Bakugou looks back at Tenya, and Tenya treats him to a polite smile and nod. Bakugou does not nod back, and Tenya isn't entirely sure what that means. Chapter 38. The truth can be unpleasant. Summary. The time has come for Hazashi to let Izuku in on the family secret. Izuku aged 14. It's a familiar routine by now. Izuku grins as he pokes his head into Machia's room, and laughs as he hurries down the stairs. He tries to figure out what Papa might want to talk about, and freezes just as he reaches the bottom. This isn't going to be part 2 of the Birds of the Bees, is it? No, definitely not, he assures himself. That was a conversation neither of them enjoyed. He doubts there's anything left to say on the matter. He hopes there's nothing left to say on the matter. Oh God, please don't let there be anything left to say on the matter. Things do not look terribly promising when he enters the kitchen. Papa is at the stove as usual, but there is a worrying amount of crackling coming from the frying pan. But Izuku is going to be a hero. He will not back down from this challenge. He squares his shoulders, plasters his best smile on his face, and enters the battlefield. Kitchen. Kurogiri does not appreciate Izuku calling the kitchen a battlefield, and pissing Kurogiri off is a terrible idea, because muffins. Morning! Izuku greets his father and turns on the kettle. Papa always seems to enjoy a cup of tea when he wants to calm down. So, as he waits for the kettle to boil, Izuku rummages in the cupboard to find that fancy ceinture Auntie Ray gave them last Christmas, and Papa's favourite mug. Izuku kind of wishes his Papa's favourite mug wasn't a cheesy #1 dad mug he bought when he was 7. "Oh, morning," Papa startles. Then he looks down at the frying pan and swears. The pancakes are served up, but they look distinctly burnt. They eat in silence, or rather, Izuku eats in silence. His father will start eating, and then just stop and stare at Izuku, until he startles and looks back down at the food. And then the whole cycle repeats itself. "Is everything alright?" Izuku finally asks. He's lost his appetite, and most of the food on Father's plate is still untouched. Whatever they're going to be talking about, it's clearly something big and serious. Was Izuku adopted? "Yes, Papa stops, and shakes his head. "No, I don't think so, but doesn't matter. I just need to talk to you about something." That's not ominous at all. Izuku tries to crack a joke, but his smile slips when Father doesn't even smile. In fact, the man freezes and stands up. Then he shakes his head and does his best to smile. Izuku can't help but flinch because the smile looks forced, jagged, and painful. How about we go to my study? Papa suggests. Do you want some tea? I'll pass, Izuku declines, thoroughly confused. This isn't normal. Any time Papa has anything he needs to talk about with him in private, they do it in the living room, on the very same sofa where Izuku got attraction. For him to want to talk in the study, what the hell is going on? When they reach the study, they realise that there's only one chair inside, and Papa ducks out to fetch a second seat. When he returns, he treats Izuku to another smile, but it doesn't look any better than his last attempt. Right, sit. Papa gestures to the chair, somewhat unnecessarily. Are you sure you don't want anything to drink? Or do you need to use the bathroom? Are you still hungry? Papa, if you don't want to talk about this... No. Izuku's father shakes his head. He sighs and combs his hand through his hair, a sure sign he's uncomfortable. This is something I have to do. The man moves around his desk and settles into his chair, and Izuku takes the chance to examine him. It's quite obvious something is very wrong. Hisashi Midoriya is normally a well-groomed, put-together gentleman, and even in Izuku's earliest memories, he was dressed smartly with a white shirt and slacks that never seemed to crease. Now, though, his shirt is not tucked into his pants. His normally handsomely messy hair looks like he's been running his hands through it, and are those bags under his eyes? Izuku, Papa starts, and then stops. He closes his eyes and takes a deep breath. Izuku, there is something I need to tell you about All For One. Have you ever wondered about where the name came from? Izuku opens his mouth to answer, but doesn't get the chance to speak. No, that's a terrible way to start, Papa groans. He runs his hand through his hair, then takes a deep breath. Izuku, just let me start at the beginning. Thoroughly confused, and more than a little concerned, Izuku leans forward. Despite the situation, he is intrigued. His father is always rather secretive, particularly about All For One, and he has wondered about who came up with such a weird name as All For One, Papa hums. The first person with it was part of the very first generation of quirk users. It was a turbulent time, as you can probably imagine, and they started using their power young, and then, at some point, they decided to just start going by the name they chose for their quirk. All For One, Izuku mumbles, as things start to make more sense. He isn't sure he likes what his brain is coming up with, because the sort of person who would choose to go by a name like that... Yes, Papa sighs as Izuku's eyes widen. The very first user of All For One was what we would nowadays call a villain. But that was years ago. Izuku tries to smile, even as his mind conjures up images of a terrifying man capable of taking anyone's quirk. He wishes the figure of his imagination didn't have his father's face, and tries to squash the panic building in his chest. He's long dead, right? Oh, Izuku, Papa sighs. Do you honestly think someone like that wouldn't search for, and acquire, a longevity quirk? So what? Izuku swallows. There's some evil uncle or great-grandfather or something of mine out there planning to take over the world? Or steal everyone's quirks? I mean, what's his big plan? He almost starts hyperventilating, but then something occurs to him. But All Might can stop him, right? As soon as he speaks, he feels very young and very foolish. All Might is strong and powerful, but a simple strength quirk couldn't possibly do much against someone who could just steal it. Izuku, it's all right. Papa manages a weak smile. You don't have to worry. All For One, he's gone. Oh, thank goodness, Izuku breathes. But what happened? It's a long story. His mouth twists, the next words obviously difficult, and Izuku can't help but wonder how he was told about All For One. It's a very long story, but alongside All For One, there was another quirk, named One For All, and this quirk, it was the only quirk All For One could not steal. Instead, it could be passed from one holder to another, and it was passed from hero to hero, all for the express purpose of defeating the villain, All For One, and he was defeated. All For One is dead. So everything is all right? Izuku manages a weak smile. The evil villain we're related to is dead and gone. Nothing to worry about? Well, so long as the press doesn't find out. He winces as he imagines what the papers would say if someone found out, especially if he does become a hero, and completely misses his father's expression. Yes. Papa slowly nods. Then he glances down at the wedding photo he keeps on his desk and winces. No, I'm sorry, Izuku. That's not quite right. The world believes All For One is dead, but technically speaking, he isn't. He's not? Izuku feels the blood drain from his face. Holy crap, he has an evil uncle/grandfather/something out there, and everyone thinks he's dead? Is Papa warning him because he might be targeted? Are they going to have to go into witness protection or something? Will Izuku still be able to become a hero? What do you mean? Izuku. Papa takes a deep breath. I was All For One. Dun dun dun! Hey guys, it's Ella, and I hope you are all having a lovely day today. All For One's Guide to a Peaceful Retirement is back! I missed it during our nice little spooky times. And so, of course, I had to come back with 6 chapters. I know, I'm spoiling you, but I am leaving you on a cliffhanger. Sorry about that, but not really. What can I say? Rat Overlord has just imbued me with their chaotic energy. If you're listening, by the way, hi bestie! So, now you must all suffer. But if you would like to appease this vengeful god, be sure to like the video if you liked it, and to boost my serotonin levels, to comment down below about what you thought of the fic, and we'll have a chat away. And subscribe if you want to be notified when I make new videos. But until then, be sure to practice some self-care, drink some water, don't skip breakfast, get the adequate amount of sleep, and yes, that is a threat. And I will see you laters.